Hello, everyone, and welcome to our demo of the new features in Beest 11.05. I'm Dimitri Schneider, and I will be presenting the demo today. I will go over the things that we changed and the new features we introduced in Beest 11.05, and we'll show those features in the software as well. So on the agenda for today's presentation, we have several changes in Beest as well as AirMet, starting with a new application we've added to the Beest suite in this version called the MaxD CONT Viewer. I'll show what that looks like and how to use that viewer to display output files graphically from contributions. Then the next four changes are in Beest. The first one is exporting data to our AirScreen for Windows software. Then turning off downwash when you're on BPAP Prime. A change in our Flare tool and selecting multiple files and calculating exceedances in Beest. Then after that, I'll show the changes in our AirMet application, which has been updated as well. How to delete the last data from the output files in AirMet, set the location for an air surface run, and reading the station locations. And finally, we've also changed the USF viewer to allow printing to a printer. I'll show that as well. All right, so the first change then is the MaxD CONT viewer. And just to remind everyone, the MaxD CONT output files are created by AirMod if you select them when modeling just three pollutants, SO2, NO2, or PM2.5. What those files do is that they allow you to include contributions to a high concentration value at every receptor in your model. And previously, you would have had to review these files manually in a text editor or in Excel. And this new application, we now have a way to do that graphically as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Beest. And in this model, I have SO2 for 1 hour. And then in upper options, I've selected multiple high values, starting with the fourth highest, then selecting many other values as well. And I also have two sources in my model, and I have a group all, and I have individual source groups for each of those sources. Now, in output options, if I go to this MaxD CONT file tab, I've said that the primary group I'm interested in is the all group, and I want to see high values starting from the fourth high to the fifth high and so on, as long as it's higher than the SO2 standard, which is 196 micrograms. So now, after running AirMod, which I've already done, I would now click this new button on the Beest toolbar, which is up here, which is the View MaxD CONT files graphically. And when I do that, our new application opens. And we can see all of our receptors and and actually contributions as well. Now the primary group is going to be our all group, and the stack 1 and stack 2 will be the contributions. So first of all, you are seeing the receptors at which we have exceeded our standard value of 196. It looks like that's just a few receptors around our facility, plus this one in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in and select the fourth highest rank. And then when I do that, what I'm able to see here is the concentration, which is in black above, 214, and the contribution is below that. And when I select one of the source groups, stack 1 or stack 2, the display changes and the contributions from that particular source group is displayed below the overall concentration. I can see from stack 1, and now from stack 2, which is in this case is 86 out of the 214. The 127 comes out of stack 1, and the 86 comes out of stack 2. I can now go down the ranks to 5th highest, 6th highest, and so on. And the display will change for each receptor as to what the highest concentration is and the respective contribution from that source group. In addition to that, the sources that are included in the source group are highlighted in red. And also, if you scroll down, you'll see that the last value here displayed is actually the 20th high rank. It looks like below that, there are no values above our threshold of 196 that we had in Beast back here. So from the 4th high to 20th high, we have exceedances. 196, below that, we do not. And again, you can select the ranks here, and you can see at each receptor what is the overall concentration and our contribution from the selected group. And more information about this is available in a tutorial that's included with the program. Our next enhancement in Beest 11.05 is being able to export data from Beest to AirScreen for Windows, which is our software for running the AirScreen model. And we can export point area, circular area, and volume sources to AirScreen. We can't export other sources such as line sources because AirScreen doesn't have them. What gets exported to AirScreen are the source locations, emission rates, modeling parameters such as spec height. And also, if you have an urban source, as I did in the next example, that will be exported as well. Now, before you can start exporting data, you can set it up in preferences. Let me show you what that looks like. All right, so in this model, first let's go to File Preferences, and on the Screen tab, I need to select the location of my AirScreen program, which I've already done. It's this BAirscreen.exe. So in this model, I have three sources: a point source, area source, and a volume source. And also the area source is an urban source, and the others are not. So after I have set up these sources in Beast, what I'll need to do is click the Run AirScreen button on the toolbar, which is also a new button. And then I get to select which source I want to export and which pollutant I want to export. If you have multiple pollutants in Beast, you can select which one you want to export. I'm going to export the stack first. And what that will do is create a new AirScreen for Windows modeling file with all the data that came from Beast. And again, that has the emission rate, stack height, and other stack parameters. And also has our source location and terrain file that came from Beast. And that's necessary because the receptor grid that's necessary because it will allow us to calculate the receptor elevations in AirScreen. And also, since we have a building in Beast, that was transported to AirScreen as well. Now, to run the AirScreen model, you will actually need to set a couple more options in AirScreen before you can run AirScreen. One is our receptor options. The distance to the fence line is at their default value, but we can fix that by going into Beast and calculating the distance. Just to measure the line length. Our fence line is about 90 meters away. And the other option you need to set is the metadata option. Beast built in some default values. And as soon as you're doing with cultivated lens here, you need to change these options as well to correspond to what you're modeling. And after that is done, we can go ahead and run AirScreen. Now, while that one is going, let's go ahead and export the volume source from Beast. Yes, they're on AirScreen. Select the volume source this time, and click OK. Now, if you look at the source information, you will see that it exported all the volume source parameters from Beast, including the emission rate. And it's also set up the source type in AirScreen for you to volume. And then again, we have the terrain information copied over from Beast as well. And back over here in AirScreen, we now have our modeling results from AirScreen. And we can review them. So again, after you've set up the preferences, which you only need to do once for AirScreen, you can export individual sources from these to AirScreen by clicking the button in the toolbar here, or going to the Run menu and clicking AirScreen there. The next change in Beast has to do with running BKT prime and BKT for the AMR model, which is a program that allows to calculate downwash parameters for an AMR run. In previous versions of Beast, all of your sources would be included in the run. Now you have an option to only include some of them. And this can be useful when you have some on-site sources and off-site sources, and you want to calculate downwash only for the on-site sources that are within your facility. And the next example file that I have here has just that. We have two sources inside the facility, stack 1 and stack 2, and one outside it. Now when I click run BKT prime, there's now a new option here. We can model all sources or some. I'm going to go ahead and deselect this and click the Select Sources button. And now I will tell Beast that I only want stack 1 and stack 2 included in my downwash calculations. And then I click Run. And that is done for you. Now when I run AirMod after doing that, there will be a warning saying that not all sources are included in the download file, but that's okay. You can just go ahead and say you run AirMod. The next change has to do with how we model flare sources in AirMod. AirMod actually doesn't have a flare source type. They have to model flares as point sources. And flare tool is the part of Beast that calculates the input parameters for the point source that are needed to model the flare. How that's done depends on which state you're modeling in. Several states in the United States have modeling guidelines that tell you how to calculate these parameters, and Beast includes the appropriate calculations. Now the change in version 11.05 is that when you're entering inputs, you can now select the units, whether it's metric units or English units. Previously, you only had metric units available. And the way to get to this tool is from Source Options to select a source, click the Edit button, and then we have this button called Flare Tool down here. When I click that, I will see a selection of state-specific methodologies used to calculate the point source parameters. So let's select, for example, the Iowa. And what has changed in Beest 11.05 is that now I don't have to enter everything in metric units. I can select, for example, degrees Fahrenheit, and enter it that way to calculate the parameters. The only change here is that previously you only had meters, Kelvin, and now you have different units available as well. When I click the Calculate button, the new parameters for the point source are displayed over to the right. If I click OK, my source is actually modified with those new values. And again, the change in version 11.05 is that now you can select non-metric units for your inputs. Okay, and finally for Beest, when calculating exceedances of a threshold value, we can process multiple files in the same folder at the same time. And we can now select multiple files so that the exceedances are calculated for all of them. And we can sort the files by name or date. And just as a reminder, you specify an exceedance files here in the output options in the maxi file tab. You select an averaging period and tell AirMod to report all concentrations that are above a certain value, in this case 150. Or actually 100 in this example. So once you've run AirMod, you would click the Calculate Exceedances button in Beast. And the change that I was talking about is when we click the Batch Process option. As you see, Beast displays all the files in our folder. And now I can click the Select column to select or deselect the files. So click Select to select all of them for processing. And I can also sort by clicking the next column or the date column, sort by date. So if I actually do want to select all, then I click the Select column and click OK, and then all of these files will have their exceedances processed. So again, you need to click the column itself, not the individual checkboxes, to include all the files for processing. Now for the next few slides, I'm going to talk about the changes in our AERMET program for meteorological data processing. The first change has to do with drawing the model. So when you do an AERMET model, if you model locations in America or the Western Hemisphere in general, you should actually get an extra day of data and process an extra day of data. The reason for that is that if you don't, the last few hours in your output file will be blank or just have missing values. But if you get an extra day of data in your input files, then the last day of the period that you're processing will have valid data for all the hours. However, when you do that, you will now have an extra day in your AERMET output file, which previously had to remove from that file manually. Now we've added a button to AERMET to do that for you. And I'm going to show an example of what that looks like. All right, so in my example, I have a surface and operating file. I'm processing the year 2012. So instead of saying select the year, I could select the period from January 1, 2012 to January 1, 2013. I'm going to skip over the data files themselves and go ahead and run the model. So after the processing is done, if you look at the output files in Notepad, these are my files here, the 2012 files. we will see that they include all of the year 2000. They include all of the year 2012, as well as that extra day at the beginning of 2013. And the same happens for the surface file. There's that extra day for 2013. And now AirMat has this new button called Remove the Last Day, which we've added in this version. When I click that modifies our files. So now they only go through the end of 2012. And we have removed that extra day from the output files. And the same happens for the surface file as well. It now only goes to the end of 2012. So again, you would complete your AirMat run, and then click this new button one time to remove the extra day of data. All right, the next change has to do with setting up a location for the air surface run. Typically, when you set up a model in AirMat, that location is blank and you have to enter it. We've now added the ability to just set that based on the location of your surface station. And when you set a preference in AirMat automatically, it will automatically set the location in air surface for you. So in this model, we have already set a surface station down here, but we have not yet entered the air surface location. And if I go to my preferences, and said I want to set the location for air surface, the next time that I go to the AS1 tab, that location will be set for you. And now if I change it back here, so let's say 35.4 degrees, the next time I go back to the air surface, that location will be changed as well. And that's because it's selected always in my preference. And if I select only change it if location is blank, then your air surface will be set the first time, but after that it won't be modified. So I set this back to, let's say, 35.45. Go back, that value is not changed. And if you have both a surface station and an on-site station, the value will be set appropriately as well. The AS1 will be set based on the on-site location, and the secondary air surface location will be set based on the surface station for you. And if you don't want AirMat to do that, you just go back and set the preference to no, and then it will stop setting the value here. And the last change in AirMat has to do with setting up your surface and upper air input files. AirMat is now able to find the station location in those files and set it for you. And as of right now, that's only for two kinds of input files: ISHD for surface stations and FSL for upper air stations. And for surface data, let's say that I have not set my station location yet, but I have selected my data file. Then I can click this button called Read Location, and it will go into the file, get the location for me, and set that in AirNet for me. And similarly for the upper air, once I've selected the upper air file, if it's in this FSL format, AirNet will go ahead and get the location from the file for you. And finally, for changing Beest 11.05, we have also updated our USF viewer. And what we've changed is that you can print the output summary here to a printer, which we previously were not able to do. It's not the grid that's printed, it's the summary. And here in the file menu, I was going to say File and Print. And I'm going to go ahead and say Print in landscape mode first, and say Print. In this case, I'm printing to a PDF file. And yes, the viewer is in here. And yes, the viewer will export what's in the summary out to a file or to a printer. Again, to do that, you just select a file and say File and Print. Those are the changes in our Beest 11.05. And I will go ahead and now take questions about these changes.